I definitely think like thinking you're just going to bring AI and sit it on top of your old busted stuff with your old busted data is a great way to get an expensive busted project. And that's really what you're looking at. So, yeah.
I think that's the chief takeaway of avoid cheap busted projects and try your best to not put a ton of work into something dumb. Are those our hot takes for today?
Well, listen, I mean, it's not a hot take. Like there is no simple fixes, right? Like at the end of the day, like somebody thinking they're going to go buy a tool that's going to come in and solve all their problems, that person was born at night and maybe last night, like that, because that's not how anything works in the world, right? So like that is
data scientist.
No, but it's just like
PhD level.
There's not an easy win at the giant level. There are easy wins in the small level, and that's why that like incremental approach works, is because you never win by boiling the ocean.
Welcome to Agents of IT, where we decode the future of enterprise automation and explore what it really takes to achieve agentic, zero-ticket IT. We chat with a wide variety of guests to discover what's broken in IT operations and spotlight the tech and teams leading the zero-ticket charge. Whether you're a CIO trying to shift from reactive firefighting to strategic value, or an automation architect building the next-gen service desk, this is the space for you.
I'm Heuer, CEO of Resolve.
And I'm Ari Stowe, COO of Resolve. And we're lucky enough to be joined again by the CEO and producer of Grain Gang and producer Ian, bringing us back some articles. Thanks, Ian, for joining us today.
CEO and producer. I like that. And I like that we're bringing back the commodities.
Callbacks to the Grain Gang. Yeah, I'm not. Listen, I got the tattoo on my back, so we're in business.
I went with the calf muscle tattoo. So.
Okay, I like it.
Nice.
I went full back tattoo, Grain Gang, and just a big old yeah.
Grain Gang for life, man. Well, it's good to see you guys again. It's been a minute. This is going to be another episode where we're going to be taking a look at some interesting, controversial, eye-popping, agentic AI headlines that I kind of stumbled across, and getting your hot takes on what these headlines are saying, the perspective that we want to get out there, all of that good stuff. So let's start with an article that I found on Customer Think. I think this one dovetails with a discussion point that we've been seeing a lot in the market recently, and it's knowing when agentic AI is truly agentic. You know, that term has come a long way in terms of like its prevalence in the marketplace, and we're seeing more and more that everybody is calling their AI agentic. But is it really? So basically it explores like the growing hype around that, warns that many vendors are agent washing simple tools like chatbots as fully autonomous agents. And really it kind of talked about how the qualities that separate that from an actual agentic AI, like governance, adaptability, things like that. So my question for you guys after reading this is, how might people know whether an agent is agent washed? Like, especially in a crowded space where everyone is suddenly calling their chatbot an agent. Like, what differentiates between a chatbot and a truly agentic AI?
Probably the easiest answer is the ability to take action. So if it's just bringing back information, then it is more of just a chatbot. But when you see it like acting or planning and then acting, then you know that you've got a bit more of an agent on your hands. I do love the AI and agent washing phrase is such a, I mean, like we've seen this for so long. AI ops is like the original player in this, right? They were like,
you just
we do AI, and you're like,
you define about 1,000 rules, and then we call it agentic.
Yeah. Our AI is, we sat down with you in a room and you defined every rule that you could possibly have, which I guess technically is, after you've told them the rule, it is artificial intelligence. It is, but like, it's not what people are wanting to hear about here. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I like. I think in today's world, it's incredibly hard, like at least on a surface level, like when you're purchasing a product, it is incredibly hard to tell whether what you're acquiring is truly intelligent or if it's just something that's scripted in the background, right? Something that's following a set of rules or patterns, as opposed to something that's actually like learning and thinking and like applying its own reasoning. I mean, that's probably why it's, you know, these are being highly scrutinized by most people purchasing it. You're going through longer proofs of value, and people want to see different specific use cases when they test it. Because, you know, in today's world, it is kind of hard to tell until you see it really working in your environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other side to this too is there's a blend of, listen, there are going to be some use cases, some things you want to do in your environment that are still going to be a rules based or like a run book based thing, a workflow that's based on something very custom to you, very specific to your organization. And the thing that really to me like makes an agentic AI agentic is, one, it's easy to build that logic. So like you're not having to write a whole application in the background, and you're not, you know, writing Java or C# yourself to do that. And then once that's in place, it has some flexibility. It's not as rigid as a lot of the rules based things. I think that those are kind of like the two big things for me that I see as a differentiator between like the agents that we're building with customers and the things that I see out in the marketplace where someone's like, look at this agent. And I'm like, that just vomited back the words you said an hour ago. That's not an agent. And so, yeah, I think it's tough. I mean, this is almost entirely a gray area, right? I mean, even in this article, I laugh because the article talks about like true AI agents are reasoning. And it's like, we don't even know that that's a capability that AI agents have.
You're doing math.
Yeah,
I believe that 100%.
Like the reasoning aspect of it is a gray area in and of itself. So the fact that you just like hand waved and we're like, well, if the agent is reasoning, then it's agentic. And I'm like, you don't even know what that means. So yeah.
I mean, the best example that I have though is like the one from John, where he's basically trained these domain specific agents and is now has them collaborating with one another. And he's collaborating with them. And I mean, that goes beyond what most people think about, because most people are thinking about a single agent, a single intelligent, as opposed to many different domain specific entities, right? We talked about it as what was it, like AI FTEs, AI employees.
So.
I mean, and that's the best metaphor for it that I've seen, is like AI employees. Like if you train an AI to be incredibly good at doing testing, like integration testing, unit testing, security testing, penetration testing, like it's just so, you trained it to be the freaking expert in testing things. And then you train another one in being an expert in actually writing good backend code, really clean, like interactions with databases, interactions with infrastructure, like just really clean, really high performant, high scale, right? It knows how to like build concurrent applications so that they can scale, you know, IO to an incredible level. And then you've got one for front end, you've got one for a management layer that makes them all like play nice together, which is, you know.
Yeah, it's even smaller than that. I mean, like those things, to your point, are like, it's actually lots of little, what they're calling now small language models. It's all of those small language models that are domain specific models against those even smaller tasks, right? Like your testing agent is built up of an SLM or an FTE that knows just penetration testing for websites, and another one that knows penetration testing for web apps, and another that knows for security and SAML, and then you start to build those, and then you've got an agent, a small agent of teams that does penetration testing, and then a testing team, and then and that's where you're starting to really see a lot of that value. Because I mean, I think listen, GPT-5's been out for a while, and you're seeing people revolt against it in a lot of ways, because it's trying to be the master of everything and the expert of none. And you're getting some of these crazy answers that are, because it's just reading from all kinds of data to pull that context. And I think like one of the things that we've seen is that customers that go with smaller context SLMs or domain specific like agents that and combine those agents to be orchestrated agents, there's just way more value there. And then you do have the ability to get things like a plan, and then action out of that plan is, hey, agent, we want to build a comprehensive pen test to secure our application for ISO 27001. Well, you've talked to a security agent, a pen test agent, a web agent, and maybe an ISO 27001 agent. And now you bring all of them together, all of that knowledge, and now you've got an action plan and actions that can be taken and automations that are, can be built specifically for those individual tasks. And that's how you get value out of, people. It's also how you're going to get value out of these SLMs.
I just love the idea of AI agents arguing with one another.
It's not as amusing as you'd think. There's a lot of just very gentle back and forth.
As CEO of the organization that gets to watch people argue all freaking day, it's a little. It's
you think the pen test agent goes and is like, man, that guy on the front end side, like,
he's probably much more pragmatic. He's like, he's probably like, man, that guy that thinks he knows front end code has no idea about SQL injection, which is laughable because that's been around since, it's probably much more pragmatic. Like, how do you not know about this?
I feel like
want to be around coffee talk.
Yeah. Sorry, Ari, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, now I want to be around agent coffee talk. I want to hear them complain about each other.
Yeah. Agents around the water cooler. I feel like that's it's closer to reality than we might think. Like, who knows? I want to circle back around to one quick thing, because before I saw this article, I don't think I'd seen the term agent washing before. But Ari, you briefly mentioned that goes back a long ways towards like AI ops.
Yeah,
like
AI washing was a very common term for a long time, and it was about tools. A lot of like what Sean and I were joking about early is like, as some of the early AI ops tools came into place, and they weren't even really rules based. Like, you were writing custom snippets of code that were looking for pieces, and you were literally just parsing logs based on your parameters. People would call that AI, and it got referred to as AI washing. And then as AI got more popular, more tools were AI washing and saying, yeah, we've got AI. And it was really just like, not AI. It was like basic versions of categorization, not even like nearest neighbor ML stuff, but like not even AI. And so, yeah, I think this is just the next iteration of it. Right.
Yeah. And I also want to go back to something that you both commented on, which is a lot of people think about AI purely in terms of the agent, but there's more to it than that for the enterprise, isn't there? There's that orchestration layer. Do you think it's fair to say that another way people can kind of differentiate between chatbots and true agentic AI is their ability to not just act autonomously, but act within an orchestration layer?
For sure. I mean, I think chatbots can do some of that as well. And I think, like, we have a great example of that. Like, we see customers regularly using our front end Rita to do some chatbot like things, like pulling knowledge articles and having a conversation with a RAG, or having a conversation with that knowledge article through RAG interaction. But we also see customers taking that to the next level and saying, these tickets are automated using this workflow, and kicking off that workflow and grabbing the parameters from the customer, and the AI behind Rita is going out and first off, knowing that's what the customer is asking for in their own language, and then hooking that up to the workflow that exists already, and marrying that and taking the action and resolving the problem. And so I think, like, yes, it can be both. Like, a chatbot can do some of the orchestrated stuff too, but when you start to see it taking action, that's kind of the agentic piece. I think the other piece that the article kind of hints at, and I don't actually know where I fall on this. Like, I thought it was a good point, but I don't know where my end position will be on this, is the concept of like the guardrails and feeding into a workflow. I thought that was really interesting, because I'm trying to think if I know of chatbots that have the ability to put those guardrails on. And I think the answer is usually no, because most of the chatbots we think about are literally like, I am the owner of it. Here is all of my information. And then anyone who comes and asks you about that has access to all of that information. Where I see the chatbot agent like kind of gray area is where I can say like Sean's the CEO, so he can ask about anything, but Ari is like doesn't have access to some of the security things that might exist. And so I'm going to put some guardrails that say, you know, Ari can't go access that information, but Sean can. And like that starts to get into like chatbot and agent, and then you start getting into that orchestrated like understanding the intent of things. And like the article scratched at the surface of it, but I think this is one of the I had a really cool conversation with a customer about this in the network space, where they have segmented teams that aren't allowed to know about other teams in the area. They're in a very tightly controlled APAC region where they're not allowed to do like anti-competitive conversations. And so their reps that work for customer A, they aren't allowed to know what contractual speeds customer B has and what parameters they have in place. And so they were like, well, they don't get to know that, but could they ask this agent a question like, is customer B's stuff faster, or on average, is it faster? And now they're getting to information they're not supposed to get but like by intent. And so like now the guardrails used to be just like, do you have the rights to this information? And now the guardrails have to be like, what is it that Ian is asking about? Like, what is the intent of what he's asking about? And does he have the right to know that? And so I think that like the whole guardrails conversation in current state might be a little bit more gray. In the future state, like absolutely have to be part of the AI brain that is helping you say like, are you asking about nefarious things or trying to do nefarious things and figure some of that out?
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
I think about that. Like it's interesting because like if I could train an AI agent to be like Richard or in Joe, if I had like a combo Richard and Joe who are like our CISO and our like legal counsel, if I had one that are trained to be those two cats, and then every response that came through from my chatbot basically was
run through them.
Yeah, run through them.
Yeah.
You know, it would be, I think it'd be interesting to experiment with, because honestly, like, I wonder how much it would filter it and how much it would like, you know, clean up to where potentially some things were just not useful. But I do also wonder, like, if it could eliminate those types of things, these like, these issues of access control that become much broader, much harder to control in the AI world.
But I think, I mean, the part to this that like always intrigues me is at the end of the day, it's about the intent of the person using it. And intent is so, I mean, like there's whole like legal loopholes and frameworks around that, right? Is like, you have to prove that I intended to do the thing that caused you harm for me to be liable in some scenarios. And like, it's the same thing here. And like, I think that it's an interesting perspective, because today when I have this conversation with customers, we have the same problem. Like, I can't assume that every employee that works for the company doesn't have malicious intent. And we have controls out there looking for and preventing what you can do with that malicious intent. But the concern that I'm hearing a lot of people say is, yes, but as I give AI access to more things, it has access to more and it can do it faster. And so for me, like trying to be more careful about what I can intervene with and understand about the intent is going to be more important. And I think, Sean, you're right. Like, it would be really interesting to know if I passed everything through Joe, you know, like again, and anytime you have this, you're a hammer, everything's a nail, like you're going to get those kind of things out of it. And so like, do you end up distilling this to a point where it's not useful, or you're having way more conversations than you need to be having about things that aren't that serious, because, you know, it's elevated the threshold of what you're willing to accept or not accept. It's definitely going to be one of the new problems we're going to have to figure out and solve and play with and tweak.
Like, so like, I'll give you one more nugget and then I'll hand it back to you, Ian, because I know you want
Sounds
to ask
good.
more questions. So
yeah,
like, if you
look, like I got stuff.
If you look at the like typical large organization, and like kind of going back to the whole like agents as these FTEs, and the way that people are kind of thinking about it and structuring it today is in this a really similar dynamic to how they've structured their people, right? How they've actually structured their process, how they've structured how decisions get made, right? And they're trying to mimic that with these agents. And if you go to most large enterprises today, anytime there's a new software package involved, it goes through a security team. Anytime someone wants to take to a new approach to architecture for a major critical application, it goes through like an architectural council. Like the large organizations are so freaking good at creating bureaucracy. Like they are phenomenal at elevating experts and giving them authority to veto and say no to things and be approvals of things. And like, I really do. I see this governance thing becoming kind of that, where it's going to make every AI interaction more expensive. Like you said, Ari, like you're running things through, a filter that most things don't need to go through. And then two, it's going to start to eliminate risk, right? Aggressively eliminate risk inside of a company. And so the value that comes through is going to be diminished over time. Like, I don't know, that it's something I think large enterprises tend to be very like CYA. And to some extent, it's going to make it harder for them to compete with smaller, more nimble businesses in the AI space because of that. And it's going to be very interesting.
I do think the other side to that you like, something that you called out is really important to think about too, is I see a lot of these projects faltering or even failing when they're trying to replicate the human process exactly, instead of thinking about what is the thing I'm actually driving to, and is there a better way or a more efficient way or a different way to do this where I don't have to replicate the bureaucracy or the overhead of it, and I don't create that like AI fatigue or anything from having to deal through all these AI approvals, and then AI generates an M-dash filled, it's not this, it's that text box that I have to read and approve as part of the change man. Like, we don't want it to create overhead and like annoyance where it's like I could just have a person do this and it's faster. So sometimes we're going to have to rethink the process, and I think that's going to be part of the growing pains in the journey here too.
Yeah, absolutely. The M dashes and it's not X, it's Y statements, those drive our director of sales engineering absolutely crazy. He was like, I will allow you to co-host this live demo, but just make sure that those are stricken from the record. I'm like, all right, Derek, I got you. So
he and I have conversations about it all the time. Like we text each other articles, and I'm like, I got three paragraphs in and I'm not reading it, or 3 sentences in, I'm not reading it anymore because it started with 2 M dashes and it's not this, it's that.
That's not fair, because that's how I already talk and write.
Sean is a robot.
AI assassinated the M dash, I'm afraid to say.
Well,
I loved it too, but
you will always be able to tell if I use some form of AI or if I wrote it, because if it's more than like
30 words,
like 4 or 5 word sentences and like 7 sentences, then I did not write it.
I will bear that in mind. Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to our final article for this session. This one is kind of on the same level of governance and strategy. This is actually from CIO. Sean has a couple of articles on that website, so definitely go check that out. Very, very good publication.
Soft plug.
Yep. Very seamless. Don't mind if I tell you. But there was an interesting article on there called "Your Data Strategy is Broken and Agentic AI Will Expose It."
Yeah, this was my favorite article that we read, by the way. This was such a good one. This was the best article we read. It just rehashed a problem that has already existed. Like, for any time we've ever been looking at big data, like you've heard a million people say garbage in, garbage out. That is just true. That's just data. But and I think like they call that out a lot of times in this article about like you've got messy or siloed data, or like a strategy where you've got data in different locations. I think about like we are guilty of this too, and I yell at my team all the time about this. Gently yell about like, guys, you can't do this in an Excel spreadsheet. If the source of data it doesn't have the most accurate information, then we shouldn't have that source of data. Like it's not valuable anymore. But what I thought that was really good about this article was it wasn't just garbage in, garbage out. It talked about like actually approaching not doing this in silos, doing this correctly, and like making sure that you're magnifying those weaknesses with the strategies you're putting in and then solving them. So it's not just about like, hey, you can't solve this problem, those data silos are going to make AI worthless. It was like, it's going to highlight them as a problem and you need to fix them, or not use AI, because AI is good. Like your AI is going to be less valuable. And I was like, well, that's a little hyperbole, but I like the approach of don't just throw your hands up in the air. Like, here's how you can fix it.
Sure.
Yeah. Question, just diving right in.
I know this was such a good article though. It was so
I
good.
could tell
was so
that
excited.
I could see you like hyping yourself up as I was reading a bit about the article, and I was like,
let's
oh,
go.
he's ready to
CIO
go
magazine, nailing it.
I also want to make it clear to the audience that this is not one of the articles that Sean wrote. Definitely check out Sean Heuer on CIO, but this is not one from us.
That would have been way funnier if I was like, the author of this was unbelievable. What a smart guy. And then it's like, oh, written by Sean Heuer.
No, if it had been written by Sean, you would have been like, "Oh, this is terrible." I disagree.
Yeah, I would have had to throw at least a couple.
He would have torn it apart.
It would have. But I found it interesting as well, because it did really touch on the siloed, outdated architecture and how companies can only succeed by kind of re-architecting. It kind of ties back to how you need more than agentic AI if you want to have an effort that doesn't stall or backfire. But one of the questions that I had was that, do we agree that bad data is the number one blocker to agentic AI success, or are there other potentially bigger factors? Is it case by case? Like, any thoughts on that?
I still don't think it is. It is a very real problem, and especially if you're trying to apply AI into specific domains, like it. And the more, I don't know. I've said this on, I think, a few of these is, if you're going to build your own agent, if you're going to roll your own, right, you're going to invest in building your own intelligence engine. It sure as heck, it better be on something specific to your world, specific to your domain, right? If it is something commodity that everybody else is doing, you're wasting your time, because vendors are going to do it and they're going to do it better. And so that already kind of narrows the sphere, the universe, down to something very specific to your business. And so, like, say your retail, like one of the things that at Kroger that, again, 15 years ago, so I'm free to talk about, they were focused on is logistics. Is like, how do we get fresher produce into our stores, and then how do we do it efficiently and cheaply? And they were doing a lot of very manual analysis. They were going out and looking at the fields. They were meeting with farmers. Like they would send a small army out to do all of this analysis on how are we doing it today and how could we do it better. And so they could have used that as a way to capture all data in a very clean and structured manner. Now, they wouldn't have had great data on the trucks and the routing of the existing trucks and the gasoline consumption. That was probably all garbage. It was crap. It wasn't consistent. It was in different silos. But if they really saw that as something that could be paradigm shifting for them, they could basically be like, great, let's go create a clean data set out of this space that could drive some of this intelligence engine. And so, I don't know, there is always a solution to the data problem if you are applying it in the right space, in the right domain.
Yeah. I just add, I think the article did a good job. I don't remember if I wrote it down as a note or if I took it directly out of the article, but the big takeaway that I had was that AI thrives on context, right? Context awareness, and context is everything for AI, especially as you're talking about these LLMs, or SLMs. The more context it has on the thing you're trying to ask it about, the better the result you're going to get. So it's not just about bad data. If it's just bad data, then there are ways to solve it. But if you've got bad data that leads to bad context, then you're going to get bad reasoning, right? And so I think that's the important piece. Is I agree with Sean at some points. I do think that bad data is probably the most overwhelming problem, because people are so used to hearing that oh, well, LLMs are really valuable when you give it all of the information to consume. And all of the information to consume is also how Grok's chatbot ended up being a neo-Nazi. So like I think like part of what you have to understand is it's context plus data. And so I think there are ways to combat those problems. And sometimes you might decide, hey, I like it's better to not give any of this data to the bot and give it the context and start capturing new data, and the bot will get better. But like I think you've really got to think about it's data in support of context, in support of reasoning. And that's really what you're trying to get down to. Whether it's actual reasoning or fake reasoning, that's what you're trying to get down to, is somebody that can use the context and the data you have to intuit something out of that maybe you wouldn't be able to see or would take you a lot longer to put together.
I mean, and I do think like there are these like lazy strategies, and I don't know, I'm calling them lazy. I'm sure these people work very hard at doing dumb things, but it's applying
shot for shot,
trying, just taking a massive freaking data set and just trying to dump it into AI and see what happens. Like this goes back to what we've talked about so many times of like, a strategy of see what happens is not a strategy. Like that's not, you're not chasing an outcome. Like, what Ari's talking about. And for me, it reframes into my head of like, just, you need to shrink the universe to something that you think you can drive results in, and then get clean data for that small universe. And you can continue to expand that universe as you like clean it up, as you add value. Like it just goes back to incremental development that we've known as smart and good since the beginning of software development. And so like, if you try to start with like, what'll happen if I put this entire Redshift database, into an LLM, or you train a model with it, what'll come out? And like the odds are it's going to come out with junk, right? It's going to be kind of crap. You might be the one person that finds, antibiotics, but you're probably not.
There are likely nuggets of good information even in bad data. I think the difference is when you start taking that approach, like you said, of just like throwing everything into a database and then saying, hey, AI, go look at this database and tell me what I need to know. You're gonna turn it a bit into finding a needle in a haystack, right? Like you're just creating a new problem. And that's where a lot of people are telling you the whole like trust but verify, right? Like when you're going and doing this, use AI to help you build a strategy and then go validate that and validate the conclusions. But I mean, like, again, I think Sean's point of like, improve this, use small data sets, build it on specific things about, like all of these are things we've talked about for other reasons are also good approaches. It's just it also will help you with the amount and quality of data. And also don't be afraid to, like, if you've got bad data, don't use that data, or put some guardrails around that data. Like, I think there are other ways that you can handle this, but I definitely think like thinking you're just going to bring AI and sit it on top of your old busted stuff with your old busted data is a great way to get an expensive busted project. And that's really what you're looking at. So, yeah.
I think that's the chief takeaway of avoid cheap busted projects and try your best to not put a ton of work into something dumb. Are those our hot takes for today?
Well, listen, I mean, it's not a hot take. Like, there is no simple fixes, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, somebody thinking they're going to go buy a tool that's going to come in and solve all their problems, that person was born at night and maybe last night, like that, because that's not how anything works in the world, right? So like that is
data scientist.
No, but it's just
PhD
like
level.
There's not an easy win at the giant level. There are easy wins in the small level, and that's why that like incremental approach works, is because you never win by boiling the ocean. Like that's just not real.
I'm a massive advocate for that. We ran when I was at AWS, this was like 5 years ago, we ran a project on unstructured data for a very large insurance company. They had an incredible amount of unstructured data, terabytes of it. And you could have easily been like, well, let's just feed it in and see what happens. But like we went through like, what are the interesting possibilities? Like, what could we use this for? Right. We settled on a few key use cases. Like we've got images of every car accident that's ever taken place of any one of our customers. Could we use that to train a model that could recognize and then infer how much we should pay out based on the damage seen in a photo? And it's like, oh, that's interesting. Now we can cross these photos with payouts, and like that could be a really interesting data set. But like we shrunk the universe before we tried to apply some kind of outcome to it. And I really think like that's the secret to being successful. Shrink it to something you could truly impact that's actually going to drive momentum in your business, your executives are going to care about, and that buys you permission to do the next thing.
Well, thank you guys so much for these, we'll let the
not
audience
so
decide
hot takes.
we'll let the audience decide. Let us know what you think in the comments and wherever you're listening to this episode. We'd really, really appreciate it. And I think that about does it for this episode of Agents of IT. So Sean, Ari, as always, thanks for taking some time on a busy Friday. I don't know how these always end up being on Fridays, but it's also just a good day in general. So I think we're all good.
You get us tired and willing to talk more on a Friday.
Yeah, more aggressive hot takes, basically.
I'm exposing my own psyop here.
Yeah, but I like it.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you folks so much for listening. We'll be back with more episodes, more hot takes, more great conversations with customers. And thank you for listening to Agents of IT. The future is zero ticket, and we will see you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Agents of IT. If today's conversation got you thinking differently about your own IT operations, or if you're curious about how agentic automation is helping teams make the zero ticket vision a reality, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You won't want to miss what's next. See you next time.